This is China trying to throw a grenade into the works.
China just offered Canada a deal. What's it to Mark Carney? Nope. We found out on CTV News with Vashi Capello. This massive deal will change Canada's fortunes from depression to success overnight. Beijing says if we drop our 100% tariff on EVs, they will drop all their tariffs on Canada, including the 100% tariff on Canadian canola. And it doesn't even stop there. They offered us something else that would make Canada rich again. Sounds simple, right? Farmers win, everybody's happy. Wrong. This is the biggest test to Mark Carney's career. Let's see who he serves. I'm going to unpack all this in this report. And if there is a wrong move here, this would trigger Canada's collapse. We're on the precipice. Remember? Let's get into this report. Today, China's ambassador threw a wrench at Canada. Oh yeah, and Mark Carney, he did not expect this one. He went on CTV and he said it plainly. If you lift your EV tariffs on China, we will lift every single tariff on you. And what does that mean for Canada? 2/3 of all our canola gets sold to China. That is roughly $5 billion a year before this entire mess started. Those tariffs crushed exports. They're down 20 to 30%, but farmers, they're just picking up all of their product and they need to sell it. The problem is they're currently selling it for a significant discount right now. And economies across Saskatchewan, Alberta, they're on the edge. And Ottawa's $370 million aid package is just a Band-Aid on a shotgun wound. And for most people just looking in, this is a pretty good deal because Canada's sales for EVs is only 2% of the fleet. That is it. So we're going to remove 100% tariff on only 2% of our sales. That is nothing. In order to get full access to the Chinese market, selling all our canola over there at top dollar. You got to really think, because this is the worst possible time for this to happen for Canada, but it might be the plan because Donald Trump just imposed a 100% tariff on China because of their decision to restrict rare earth minerals to the US. So the trade war is exploding between the US and China, and guess who's stuck in the middle? Canada. And so people are aware, this is exactly what Beijing wants. They want to drive a wedge between Canada and the United States. They want us to lock in with China for their batteries and their EVs and all of their tech. They did the same playbook in Australia. But this is a warning because it's cheap cars today and total dependence tomorrow. You could already see it. BYD cars everywhere, ready to flood the market. And once dependency sets in, they won't need to do tariffs anymore. They will own the supply chain. And that's not trade, that's capture. Let's take a look at this Vashi Capello breaking news with China's ambassador. But one thing I have to say is the deal comes with additional deal. Remember what I said? We could be rich again? Yeah. Let's take a look.
Sign yet that this will be a quid pro quo, that if in fact we do remove those tariffs on Chinese-made EVs, the ambassador from China told me explicitly China will remove their tariffs in a commensurate fashion. Have a listen to it.
So if Canada removes the unilateral unjustified tariffs on Chinese products, China will also reciprocate accordingly. And if the EV tariffs are removed, then China will also remove the tariffs on the relevant products of Canada.
I also had the chance to talk to the ambassador about the possibility of more Canadian oil and gas going to China. TMX, for example, LNG projects in BC, all of that is aimed at diversifying our markets away from the United States and sending more oil and gas to China. The question is, though, if, for example, we were to double that and have another pipeline that goes out west, is there enough demand in China to take all that extra oil? The ambassador seemed to indicate that there is.
Now, there you have it, Canada. David Eby, you are on notice. We're building a pipeline to the West Coast and selling 1 million barrels per day to China. It's time for us to be rich again. No more 4 million people to the food bank. No more 18-hour waits in the hospitals. No more potholes across Canada. No more $100 pieces of steak. It's time that we live in luxury. The only problem is we have a David Eby, we have a Mark Carney, and we have a Liberal Party that believes in net zero, meaning zero soup for you.
Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump is threatening a massive increase on Chinese tariffs. In a post on his social media site, Trump said, starting November 1st or sooner, depending on any further actions or changes taken by China, the U.S. will impose a tariff of 100% on China, over and above any tariff that they're currently paying. He adds also on November the 1st, the U.S. will impose export controls on any and all critical software. Let's get into this more now with international trade lawyer Robert Glasgow. Robert, great to have you with us. Thanks for making some time. Let's start with those comments from the Chinese ambassador to Canada that we were just playing as relates to tariffs. What do you make of that?
Well, on those comments, Canada's kind of caught between Scylla and Charybdis on this. On the one hand, you have the Chinese government wanting Canada to open up its markets and to remove the unilateral tariffs that Canada imposed. On the other, you have actually a dual pressure, one from the United States government, because those tariffs are part of a strategy that first unfolded under President Biden, but then also from Canadian automakers because of the integrated Canadian and U.S. and Mexican auto market. So it really is in a really tough needle for the Carney government to thread to try to placate the Chinese enough to help out the canola farmers and the other agricultural products that China has been levying tariffs on, and the other not submarining our own domestic industry and not, annoying the Americans to the point that they might take retaliatory action.
Yeah, it's quite a complex situation, isn't it, Robert? But where does it tell you about where the needle is or whether it's moved or not at all between Ottawa and Beijing?
So I think the fact that China is making comments shows either one of two things. Either number one, that Canada has been engaged in quiet and effective diplomacy with the Chinese government, such that they're about to move.
It was announced today that Anita Anand is heading to China. I'm sure it has something to do with this new announcement from China. And I don't think they've been getting much success from China. There's two superpowers working against Canada together and smashing us.
Or that Canadian negotiations with the Americans are actually much more advanced than some people might think, and much more advanced than some of the public comment that we've gotten. And this is China trying to kind of, throw a grenade into the works, so to speak, to try to keep things from resolving satisfactorily.
I don't know about that. How would China even know how negotiations are going with Donald Trump and Mark Carney? This is definitely made up. It's one of his analysis. With that being said, China probably sees the United States and says, they're starting to talk again. I don't like this. It's time to throw the wrench.
So who has to blink next here, do you think?
It really is difficult. Because China has abundant export markets that they can look to, and they also have the largest consumer market in the world. So they have a lot of leverage from that perspective. On the other hand, the Canadian canola market is one that can be adequately compensated by the Canadian government.
And that's just a solution with everything, isn't it? The Canadian government will come and subsidize and help everybody. With what money exactly? We're running potentially $100 billion deficit this year.
And Canadian canola farmers can be supported through these difficult times. And, China has a rampant need for inputs. And one of the biggest inputs that they need are agricultural goods to help feed their very large population. So it really is an interesting place where I'm not sure who has to blink first.
China doesn't need Canada's canola oil. It's not even a food product. It's a luxury item so they could grill their chicken in oil. And they're getting a lot of their supply from Australia. Australia can't supply all of it, but they're making up a lot of the difference.
I think that it will be interesting to watch to see, number one, how the American negotiations go, because maybe that can then provide some relief to the Canadian exporters by opening up those markets.
I was going to ask you about that before we wrap up here, because Trump threatening to massively hike tariffs on China. How do you sort through the bluster of that and figure out where the substance is going next?
Well, I mean, you have that old saying, Trump always chickens out. And we already saw some slight softening of Trump's comments late night, where he seemed to imply that maybe that call with President Xi is still on. And so you never know whenever he makes these after hours and after market hours comments about China that then moves, the market moves cryptocurrency massively. Whether or not he's going to maintain that attitude once the futures markets opens on Sunday, or if he's going to suddenly about face and we're going to be dealing with another market rebound. It's really hard to predict where he's going to go with any of this. But if he does stick to a hard line, that potentially does give Canada some additional leverage with the Chinese. So the Chinese are going to need additional markets if the American one is being slammed shut.
All right. It's certainly a complex conversation, and I know we'll have to continue it at another time.
So what's Mark Carney going to do? What he could do is something called Liberation Day, where he lowers Chinese EV tariffs from 100% to 25% to match the U.S. tariffs. Then he could demand a multi-year quota sales to China for Canada's canola. And he could throw in there a joint venture headline with maybe a Chinese EV plant in Ontario. He's going to make it look like progress. Behind closed doors, you got Washington, D.C. calling and Doug Ford saying, you better not blow up my $52 billion auto manufacturing business. And Trump could call Mark Carney and say, if you cozy up with China, you're going to cozy up with tariffs indefinitely. Canada has become the world's punching bag. The truth is, Canada's canola is held hostage right now. We're not negotiating in a position of strength. We're negotiating in a position of desperation. And Mark Carney better not screw things up, because the optimism for his government is straight up in free fall right now. Look, in July, it was at 43%. Now it's at 33%. It's not what it was in December with Justin Trudeau, but it is falling hard. And when Mark Carney goes to the prairies,
here's a little tidbit. Go to the prairies, they're really angry. Much more angry than everybody else, Michael. I don't know if you're surprised. They're still angry.
Well, I mean, I don't want to call it not breaking news, but yeah.
It's unbelievable. A 10-point drop is massive. The honeymoon is over. So if there was an election today, it's basically tied, because nanos, they favor the liberals every single time. So it could potentially be conservatives ahead right now. See, if Mark Carney doesn't figure this thing out with the United States, and now China's joining the mix, and they see that he wrecked things with China as well, Canadians thought he was the expert negotiator, the banker, the guy that's going to save Canada. And they're starting to realize he's not doing any of those things. He's a flop, a failure. So if he doesn't figure things out and he doesn't have much time, he better have a pipeline to the West Coast within the next 30 days. He's not even going to make it to Christmas. I can't wait till I see a new press conference tomorrow from David Eby saying there's no proponent. There's no pipeline. Nobody wants our oil. Oh, baby, this is going to be one of those wake-up calls. Or maybe we won't hear from David Eby all week. Wouldn't that be nice if he just didn't do any press conferences? We would be relieved, in fact. My take on what Mark Carney should do: yes, do the deal, but he should keep his eyes wide open. There needs to be strings attached in this. Lock in guaranteed canola quotas. and force Chinese EVs. Any Chinese EV sold in Canada needs to use a North American battery. And before you do any of this, Mark Carney, please call Donald Trump. Don't text him. I know you like texting, but call him and tell him you're going to be removing the tariffs in order to save the canola industry. You need to get ahead of it. Because if Canada wants to survive between two global superpowers, we need to stop pretending neutrality exists, because it doesn't. We don't get to play both sides forever. This deal could save the prairies, or it could sink the auto industry. This is the kind of moment that history remembers. Is Mark Carney going to be this expert genius, or is he going to be a flop? It's your move, Mark Carney. I can't wait to provide all of you with updates. I'll see you on the next report. Oh yeah, happy Thanksgiving to all of you.